Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, Dwyrin here, and wouldn't you know it, it is a brand new year, 2018. Many of you probably making New Year's resolutions that might pertain to Go. Some of you maybe want to get stronger, maybe some of you want to get weaker. Either way, if one thing you are going to be doing is playing Go this year, then there's probably a few Joseki that you might want to make certain are safely tucked under your belt, because there's a good chance you might be seeing them this year if for whatever reason you didn't see any of them last year. So this is my top Joseki that you should know for 2018. So let's go ahead and break this out immediately, much like you would see it in one of your own games. And start off stealing a ye old 4-4 point in the upper right hand corner, maybe something a 4-4, maybe dual, well hello, maybe dual 4-4 for our opponent. Maybe white backs off, and yeah, I'm clicking it. Instant 3-3 invasion. 3-3 invasion, you might say. Why? How? Wasn't too long ago where we were teaching that early 3-3 invasions like this were not a very good thing. So why would you be seeing it now, you might wonder? Well, AlphaGo, and that's all I'm going to say about it. I see you down there, dislike button. People aren't going to be clicking you. That's all I'm going to say about it. AlphaGo. Let's move on. So 3-3 is something that we are going to be seeing at all levels of play. I've seen it when I've been doing, I guess you could call them the outtakes. For some of my basic videos, I've seen them on stream against, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, maybe? Essentially, at all ranks of play, we are seeing early 3-3 invasions now, which means we have to know how to handle it, otherwise we could screw up. Let's start off by screwing it up first. Let's say, for sake of argument, and this isn't a complete screw up, let's say as either player we need to know how to handle this, and right off the bat we can see that this is usually the right way to handle it because we're getting a wall facing our potential. Our potential is our only other stones on the board. We probably wouldn't want to block from this direction because this one faces our opponent's stone, and if we lose Sente here, which is something we might do, and our opponent gets that, it's possible that we're not going to be very happy, and our potential is going to be just that much more annoying. So we probably want to block towards our potential if so possible. Black's usually going to extend, and now you have choices here. Now you have choices, very, very important choices. You have to think to yourself, what do I want to do here? That one's a toughie. Do you want Sente, for example? Or do you just want the largest wall possible? Usually people prioritize Sente. We don't usually do something like this, for example, and be like, well, alright, my opponent is just going to have Sente now to do whatever they want, to play, anywhere on the board. Usually we want to try to get in Sente, especially early in the game when there's still other things we want to play. So to that end, rather than play this, more traditional variation, we've been kind of going to war over this variation and playing things like this, for example. Because if our opponent responds, we could argue we are okay enough right now, and so we're going to go off and do something different. We can say, you know what, we can take a moment and do something large. And depending on when your 3-3 is hit in your game, that could be really, really big. Maybe there's like a life and death position on the board still that your opponent is just like going, I'll live here later. I'm going to take your 3-3 and Sente first. And then you're like, no, stupid. I'm going to go and take Sente here. You can, get a little bit of a better result there. That's fine. I'm going to grab Sente for myself. And you can just go get wrecked because I'm going to play the special move now and kill you. That'd be pretty cool. Or, begin the game, corners are still open, take Sente, get in large approach. That's fine too. All's good. However, let's say you don't really care about Sentei, you just want like the strongest position possible in the area. Or maybe your opponent is trying to throw you for a loop by not doing something quite so simple. Well, we could then play here. This kind of harkens back to the idea that we are going to Hane at the head of 2 and 3 stones. Well, we're getting the Hane in to Hane. This is the most aggressive variation I think you can play, to my knowledge, so far, against the lovely 3-3 invasion. And there are some interesting sequences here. There are some interesting sequences here, to be sure. For example, what happens if your opponent plays here? And let's say here. What happens there? This one, everyone should know, from 15 to 20 Q and up. You should know this. This is just classic mistake. Black just done goofed. But let's say he tries to get special. Whoops, I need a black stone. Black stone. There we go. Well, let's say your opponent decides to play something a little bit different. Now things have changed a little bit. If we Atari here... Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Can we still do this? Because that's now taken. The answer is yes and no. If we play this way, the answer is technically a ko. Right? Not a great ko, but technically a ko. Not white's only option here, however. Later on in the game, this can be really, really huge because that ko threat, or that ko is a little bit of a picnic in terms of if white loses it, loses some stones on top of the board, but the outside for white is pretty strong. Because you can see here we've got a nice strong wall, so it's not the end of the world. Maybe later on again there's like a life and death position elsewhere on the board, or there's like a cool invasion thing going on there. Something like that, we can, play those moves as our threats, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Early on, we might want to avoid that, though. So there are variations again. Instead of playing the Atari here, if you really want to play safe, we could, for example, do something a little bit different, and that is get in something like this, where we're going to threaten and then Atari our opponent's stone. And now, obviously, we have to be very, very careful with ladders and where they run to, but this is a pretty strong response. Black is not completely surrounded here, unfortunately. However, coming out is Gote, so that's cool, which would then give Sentei back to white, which would not be as cool. And if we don't come out, then white might get this in later, and now this is a very, very tiny corner with some seriously amazing thickness towards white. So that's a possibility. Other possibilities that we could see here after the Hane is playing this one into this one in an effort to just secure Sentei for black. If we play this way, actually, I think we play this one, actually. Yeah, we play this way. If we play this way, then black has Sentei, can go back and make some kind of an Atari. Or not Atari, that's not an Atari. Why I say that was an Atari? Can make some kind of an enclosure. There, got the word right. So as you can see, fighting over this corner can lead to some seriously complicated situations, or it can lead to, not, oops, hello, there we go, or not so much. It really depends on both players, who wants Sentei out of the corner, who doesn't want Sentei out of the corner, who's just trying to be as aggressive as possible in that corner, all that kind of thing. And hopefully you'll be able to see which way your opponent's trying to play and, dodge it or embrace it as you see fit. Now, some of you traditionalists might just say, why can't I just play this way? And the answer to that is actually fairly straightforward. We could But then this is going to be sente for black, so they can go back and, you know, get enclosures or extensions or whatever they want, because you voluntarily took a gote there in the corner there as white, and not only do you take a gote there, you also have to figure you might have left a lot of aji behind when you do this variation, because we can't just be like, stupid, I'm going to kill you, whoops, because this way kills 2 stones, and whoops, and this way might wind up giving too much aji if we can make this kind of thing work, right? So that could be a little bit of a bummer. Now, one thing you might have noticed is in a lot of these situations, you'll notice that black is taking an enclosure right here. And that means that if we do see this variation, we're very likely going to see the enclosure variations. So let's go back to a more orthodox approach real quick, just to examine this without any ladders or anything like that. Because we're seeing a lot of enclosures nowadays, what with the early 3-3, sente enclose, and just orthodox in general, knowing how to play up against this enclosure here is something that's going to want to be in your repertoire as well. If you've seen any kind of reviews on the orthodox opening, you're probably going to know that we don't usually want to split here anymore, because the idea behind the split here is to prevent an enclosure plus an extension, as we're seeing here. But the minute we play here now, what we're seeing is an enclosure and an extension. So little bit of weirdness in the offices of extreme redundancy here. So instead of that, we've been seeing a lot of approaching of the 4-4 point. Now, when you approach the 4-4 point, obviously there's a lot of things your opponent can do. You can back off, or you can do, if you're black, you can back off, you can do pincers of various types. All you should really concern yourself with are the simpler variations. Like if I go here and my opponent pincers me, know that I can just go ahead and live in, oops, hello. I can go ahead and live in the corner. My black can go ahead and get influence here, and then we can just take a large point for ourselves. Easy peasy, right? If our opponent plays here, we can go ahead and get a base. Nice and settled. Easy peasy. If our opponent backs off here, we can throw in, because we can go ahead and cut here. This does get a little complicated, but just don't die and you should be fine. Easy peasy. If we go in here and we don't want to get into that, we can extend for simplicity's sake and then take sente elsewhere. Again, easy peasy. We're looking for short, simple, to-the-point variations that don't clutter up the board with a lot of complication. One such idea in terms of complication, for example, would be splitting into this variation. I'm giving an example of something that we don't usually want to see nowadays, which is, as you can see here, a bit of more of a traditional variation that kind of, you know, clutters up about 1/4 of this board, a little bit more, right? That's an example of a variation that we probably don't want to memorize. Well, we might want to know it, but we don't really want to play it every game, because that just takes away a lot of potential. Going down a like rock solid sequence that doesn't have a lot of variation, doesn't have a lot of future aji, things like that. That can be a little bit of a bummer. Instead, we're usually going to, and I heavily advise you as well, prioritize simpler variations that, you know, maybe let you do other things within the future. I think you'll see your game improving if you play simple variations that just leave a little something extra later on. Now, here's something else we're going to be covering a lot. It doesn't deal with a particular corner Joseki so much as sequences you might be wanting to refresh yourself on, just in case you see them in your games. Now, as you know, the shoulder hit can be an amazing tool to do a reduction, most commonly seen at the lower level when your opponent just makes an amazing mistake. Like, let's say, oh, I don't know. Let's say I don't know how to do this actually. Let's say you've got Chinese Joseki. You approach your opponent pincers, you dive, and they decide that it'd be a swell idea to try and build off of a low stone or something. And we can just shoulder hit it or cap it or do something. That using shoulder hits to reduce are usually a pretty swell idea. If your opponent's low and trying to build, you can just kind of keep them pressed down nice and low, and that building doesn't become that much of a threat. But we're also seeing a little bit different use of it at the moment. We're also seeing it, for example, to build, and that can get kind of interesting. One very common mistake that I've seen is people getting very, very greedy. They're like, well, I'm just going to get some more territory. But that lets your opponent get stronger, right? In the area that they're trying to, build. So we, generally speaking, want to avoid these kind of variations. We don't want to be lured by the seductive siren calls of that third, yes, count it, third line territory. I mean, we get 2 points for every move we play. That's gotta be pretty good. Instead, what we want to do is change the situation as quickly as possible. We want to get as strong as we can, as quickly as we can, with usually a nice, wonderful iron pillar here, and then go do something else. We don't want to give our opponent a lot of Aji to work against to keep building up the area that they're interested, especially when they're using it not to reduce us, but to build. The more Aji we give them, the more they can build, and it's not so good. It's not so good. Instead, maybe something like this is good enough. We're nice and secured. We've undercut, and anything black plays there now is going to be Gote. That can be something that we would want to play for ourselves. Now, you might be saying, big deal, why are we mentioning the shoulder hits now? Everyone knows how to deal with a shoulder hit. I know how to deal with a shoulder hit. You know how to deal with a shoulder hit. Your mother, yeah, that's right. We talk. She knows how to deal with shoulder hits too. So why are we going over this now? Well, interestingly enough, the shoulder hit is also being responded to in a sometimes very different response, and that response is to ignore it. It's a bit more of an aggressive response, I will admit, but occasionally seeing what they're trying to build and just going in for an immediate reduction before they can start getting that build at all underway is also a pretty good idea. In case situation here, for example, we have a situation where white has the opportunity to go in 3 different directions. So responding to this doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. If white responds, black can respond, if black responds, white can respond, and just like so, we can still get a bit of a base here. We can still get out. All of that there good stuff. That's also another way of playing. Don't feel compelled to kill them if they try to do this. Just try to find the best way to attack, no matter which color you are. We wouldn't, for example, want to play something like this and leave it to our opponent to get first strike on our 1 stone. That would probably not make us a very happy person, because white is now nice and strong, and then what are we going to do with our 3 stones? Very, very tough. So no matter which side of the coin you are on this particular board, you would have to be made aware that you're gonna have to be careful here. First instinct to just, take as much as we can might not be the right one because our group could get in trouble as a result. And thus you can see the appeal of ignoring and trying to create complication. Another Joseki that you might want to be made aware of is a couple of variations on one of the more well-known, I would say, probably one that you have firmly in your repertoire, and that is low Space Pincers against high approaches to a 3/4 stone. Now, this has been in style for I don't even know how long at this point, but it is something that we do a lot now. Low pincers are a thing, and we need to know how to answer it. The most common response generally is going to be the attachment followed by the 2-space extension away. Reason being, this can get really difficult. I mean, if we play here, we have to think about that kind of thing. If we play there, we have to think about that kind of thing. Or simply this kind of thing into maybe pincers, whole bunch of weird stuff. So usually we just try to settle and create something relatively simple. Simple variation, as I'm sure you all know, would be just to go into something like this. And then from here, maybe grab an extension for yourself. Everyone's settled and can go along their merry little way. Popular with just about everybody. Reason why we don't go into the corner immediately, of course, is because it is vulnerable to that kind of thing, in which case we now aren't alive locally in the corner, right? We can't make 2 eyes there. So that explains the kick and then the going in. Very simple. Everybody knows it. But what do you do when everybody decides to start playing something different? What do you do if, for example, someone decides to lean on your stone? Well, the answer to that is actually fairly straightforward. This has been a thing for white now when white really, really wants to develop, and black usually just allows it to happen. Now, you might say, how can black be that insane? Oh my god, look at that influence. All you need now is something like this, and the top is worth a lot of points that we're just giving away. You're right. There's nothing I can say to that. That is a lot of points that you are giving away. Which is why I would say don't do that. Don't give it away. There's actually a lot of odds here. You don't really have to worry. The reason why we're calm in just backing away, taking some thickness, developing, whatever this happens to face in your game is because, there's a lot of stuff you can do here fairly easily in order to ensure that you're not dead unless white, follows up and invests the moves necessary to kill your stone. Don't invest the moves, you don't get killed there. The area is not a very large area, so you're actually pretty good. So I've seen some people as a result go things like this, which is not good, because now we can't save those stones. We just have to descend and then protect, and now we just lost a corner. I mean, was it even in Sente? No, looks like we just lost the corner in Gote, and now white's coming out and being a jerk, and bad things happen because you got greedy. You were like, oh no, my opponent's gonna get so freaking much. Even now, we don't care. We would just go ahead and turn and keep developing, because no matter what stone our opponent happens to place, we can live there later. Accent on later. Don't need to do it now. You could play here, for example, and just settle your original stone and then go back and live here or not, as you choose. Whatever, doesn't matter. Still a lot of things on the board left going after. Don't have to make this stone live just yet. Reason, of course, why we do want to extend up instead of down is this is a little bit passive and tends to encourage our opponent to just try to continue to take advantage of us. This kind of thing is something that we would not want to do, because the sheer amount of thickness that we're getting away in exchange for just not being surrounded is, in a word, stupid. So we fight it, extend up, and then after that, no matter how aggressive our opponent plays, short of them being completely insane and doing something that is just completely brain dead, everything's fine. If they are brain dead, just note, you don't really have to give up anything here. You can see all these Atari. Aren't they scary? I'm scared. Look at that. That's bad for you. Don't play this way. Instead, we could go boop, and then just connect back if we need to, and then we're fine. Again, not a big problem. Or we can go here first, into here, into something like this. Again, not a big problem. We're nice and strong, they're not, and everything's fine. A couple of Joseki that everyone ought to know by now, ignore the top side of the board, is of course this one. I've been seeing this a lot in ye old 2018. The wedge right here. We see this wedge in this common shape an awful lot. The most common variation is just to go ahead and do something like this. Easy peasy. You can find this on Gojohn's website. I do want to point out this one, now that we are in the realm of territory, territory emphasis, has been making a very, very strong appearance if you decide to play in this particular manner. Then it is very good to note that extensions on the side facing the enclosure are very, very important. The Atari to create Aji, very, very important. The threat for ladder, again, as you might have guessed, very, very important. This can't be laddered, so all we do now is go ahead and Atari. That gets an Atari generally as well. And then, yeah, we've got our influence. Generally speaking, when white plays this move, white is saying, I want influence or territory. Black saying here, saying, I want the territory. Then white can just go sacrifice a couple of stones, get that nice, lovely influence. Something that should probably be good to know. Maybe not for 10 to 20 Qs and below, though. Now, there is one last thing that I do want to mention. I can't believe I have to. It's not because it is making its rounds among the professional ranks, but it's just something that, for whatever reason, amateurs just keep holding on to with both hands and just refuses to let it go. If you're a fan of my streams, you know I've been playing this particular Fuseki, a lot lately. Like, I haven't been playing it. More to the point, my opponents have. It's true. It's not what I would consider to be the best Joseki in the history of the planet, but it is something that I'm seeing a lot. So a quick refresh of what this is. I believe I have a video on it that goes into it in a lot more detail, but knowing a couple of variations, for example, what happens if you try to settle and they pincer. Well, that's completely fine. We can just go and grab ourselves an easy peasy little base. And that brings us to an issue. A lot of players also decide not to protect something like this and keep their territory. A lot of players are playing this for ultimate greed mode, like, you get a single stone, I'm getting all of this. You're going to lose. Unfortunately, rarely the case. Trying to simply develop this is not as large as it appears to be. I do want to caution people not to go and invade this too early. There's really, really no reason to. If, for example, let's just go ahead and say we get something like this. Well, that's a lot of territory now, isn't it? If we just got 2, not that one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, let's just say 15 points. Let's say 15 points right side. A little bit of conservative estimate there, but that's quite okay. Well, where does black have 15 points? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say 15 points? I also meant 21 because we also have Comey. Well, let's find out where that is. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 15. 16. Wait, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 6, 7, 8. 8, 3, 24. Congratulations! Now he's ahead. Except there's an enclosure here. If this gets into another 10, 15 points, starts getting hard to equal this out, doesn't it? A lot of players I see invade here way too early. Also, a lot of players don't invade here early enough. Like if we just decide to do something like this, congratulations, we have Sente. We go about our merry little way. Black thinks he's gonna, don't play this way by the way. Black thinks he's just gonna keep all the territory. Nothing else is large on the board. This is, but let's ignore it for the time being. We could even go back and just threaten to live here for no reason other than we're keeping this confined to like no territory. By no, I mean like third line territory here, right? By doing things like this, we've just ensured this can't grow, so there was nothing really to fear here. If our opponent gets too crazy, flat out living is not outside the realm of possibility, so that's a thing too. So if your opponent doesn't decide to be a nice person and just protect their territory, don't freak out. You do have Joseki here. Hello. Either the living flat out or the sacrifice, whichever. Doesn't really matter which one. Just to keep things nice and low and their territory much, much more manageable. I hope that is the last time I have to make any sort of mentions on the Kobayashi. There haven't been any really new developments there, so the information's out there and you should have a pretty good idea how to handle it if it's coming up in your games. On that note, I think I'm going to wrap this video up there. I think those are the top Joseki that you probably ought to know for this year. Ones that I've been seeing the most, or that keep reoccurring in various games I've been either playing or watching, etc., etc. Hope you have a great 2018. Hope your opponent's not able to pull a fast one over on you trying to pull out some Joseki that you're not familiar with. And if they try, you can put them in their place. As always, hope you enjoy the videos, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.